Hello and welcome to this session of Node.js. Today our topic is Introduction to Node.js. Before we proceed, a word about OdinSchool. So OdinSchool is a technology upskilling platform. We help you continuously acquire new skills. So stay skilled, stay ahead. A word about me. My name is Vijay Makhija. I started my career back in 2010. Since then, I've got a chance to work on many technologies. I started my career with PHP, but slowly, as the trends changed, I moved on to mainly JavaScript based technologies. Over the years, I've worked on frameworks like CodeIgniter in my earlier days when I was working on PHP, and then Node and Express. I also worked on WordPress, being the most popular CMS. Uh, in the last few years, I've mainly worked on front end heavy projects, working using React and jQuery. And apart from web applications or websites, I've also had a chance to work on Chrome extensions and chatbots. Before moving on, let's try and understand why we should learn Node.js. I mean, there are a lot of other technologies. There is PHP, Python, Java, .NET. Why do we need to study Node.js? Well, the first reason is pretty obvious because the language is JavaScript. If you are into web development, you will be using JavaScript in one or the other way. Well, basically, since the last 20-25 years, JavaScript has been used in the browser for the front end. And lately, if you are into web development, you would have noticed that on the front end, there have been many technologies like React, Angular, Vue uh, that are now on the forefront of front end development. And JavaScript as a language has become a lot popular. Today, if you know a language like JavaScript, you would be able to work on platforms like these, which is MERN.js, because it uses MongoDB database, Express, a framework which is built using Node.js, and AngularJS on the front end. MERN stands for Mongo, Express, Angular, Node. So this whole stack, if you know JavaScript, it would be pretty easy for you to work on this. Similarly, there's another stack called the MERN Stack. So MERN Stack is similar with one difference. On the front end it uses React, but rest of the things remain the same. So MongoDB, it's a document database, not like MySQL or any other SQL server, but it's a document database, so it stores data in similar to JSON like documents. So it's pretty like if you're using MongoDB as a database, it's pretty obvious that you would be using Node as the backend language to work with it. So again, if you know JavaScript, it's pretty easy for you to work on stacks like these, where from the front end to the database, everything is either created using JavaScript or is similar to JavaScript. So you will be much more comfortable compared to others. Another reason, well, JavaScript is everywhere, not only on Earth, even in space. This photo, okay, is of the what do I say, dashboard or like the command center of SpaceX. So SpaceX, if you don't know, if you are living in a cave, is a company by Elon Musk, one of the first and one of the most successful companies in related to space and rockets. So JavaScript made it into space. SpaceX uses Chromium plus JavaScript for the Dragon to Flight interface, along with C++ for flight computers. So for this user interface, JavaScript was used. Uh, the guy who tweeted this is Jason Mays. He's a developer at Google. Okay, and he also tagged Brendan Eich. Brendan Eich is the guy who created JavaScript. Okay, and also co-founded Mozilla and Firefox. So JavaScript is being used in many ways these days. Not only front end for the web apps or websites, in the back end, using Node. Also, even desktop applications using projects like Chromium or Electron. Chromium is the project on which Chrome browser is created. So JavaScript has become pretty popular, and Node is hardly, I would say, 10 years old. It came out in 2009 or 2010. So even if you look at Google Trends and you search for Node.js, okay, and let's say I change this to worldwide and look at the trend since 2004. Okay, so Node came around 2009 or 10. So since it started, you see almost an upward trend. Okay, compare that with Java. Okay, so again, because Java has been around like for more than 30 years, but you see a constant downward trend for Java. Not to say Java is not being used at all, it's still a very popular language for many, many applications, but you can judge a lot by the trend. Same goes for PHP. Okay, so again, a downward trend. Okay, so in the last 10 years, there are a few platforms which do have an upward trend. Node.js is one of them, JavaScript, or even Python. If you search for Python, even that has an upward trend. Okay, and don't forget, Java is a compiled language. You have the Java runtime environment and the compiler, and so if it's a big enterprise level application, or like there are some companies who still go with Java. uh, there are many who still go with PHP. Python has gained popularity because of machine learning, AI, and other stuff that people prefer to do it in Python. But web development in general, and many companies, they prefer Node.js, and you can see upward trend if we remove these two. Okay, and remember, PHP has been around since 95. Okay, even like Yahoo used to use PHP back in 95, 96. uh, Python has been around for like at least 3, 4 decades now. I'm not sure. Java has been around for again more like almost 3 decades now. Node.js is the youngest. Okay, and it's still like it's gaining popularity day by day. It's pretty popular and it's becoming even more popular. Okay, if you search for OpenJSF NASA Node case study, so you'll get this link. Okay, OpenJSF is the OpenJS Foundation. So it comes under the Linux Foundation. So again, Linux Foundation, yeah, judging by the name, as you can know, so it's mainly a foundation for all the open source projects based on Linux. Uh, and under that comes the OpenJS Foundation, where it's a foundation for all the popular JavaScript based projects. Okay, not to mention, so in if you look at the projects, one of their most popular projects is Node.js. It comes under the impact projects, so the stage is generally for large and mature projects, so projects which have made it, which are there, uh, like very popular in the industry. So Node.js is one of them. jQuery, again, jQuery came around in 2004 or 5. and then there is Electron. This can be used to create desktop applications. Okay, IPM, again a project based on Node. So that's OpenJS Foundation. So OpenJS Foundation, there's a case study, not so from February 2020. So if you see the case study, so Node.js helps NASA keep astronauts safe and data accessible. If you scroll down in this, they have this section, why Node.js. So why did NASA, so NASA uses Node.js, and why did NASA choose Node.js? So here are the key points. The relative ease of, well, first, for starters, the team, this might be the project name, was already writing JavaScript heavy applications. So the team was familiar with JavaScript. That's one. Okay. The relative ease of developing data transfer applications with JavaScript, and the familiarity across the organization with the programming language. So don't forget this. This is the first major thing. Like, it's JavaScript is a very common language. Anybody who comes into programming, it's very obvious that they might go into some form of web development. They might work a little bit on it, any programmer these days, so they will come across JavaScript, even though they don't work on the back end, only front end. Yes, and even on the back end now these days, it's very popular. So the team was familiar with JavaScript, and they are saying the relative ease of developing data transfer applications with JavaScript. So the main keyword here is relative ease. Okay. Now, Node.js's asynchronous event loop for I/O operations makes it perfect solution for a cloud-based database system that sees queries from dozens of users. So this is the second reason. We will be understanding what this means. Okay. And the Node package manager, which is the NPM, pairs incredibly well with Docker to create microservices architecture. So you get the picture, you get the idea. Okay. NPM, again, if you're working with Node in any way, front end, or doing any front end or back end JavaScript work, you will come across NPM as well. NPM is kind of Node package manager. It's a online repository for many JavaScript modules which you will be using. Okay, if you're working, doing anything related to JavaScript these days. So even NASA uses Node.js. Okay, and so ease of programming, JavaScript is used in web development in general, in the front end as well. Now, these reasons aren't enough for using a Node.js or JavaScript on the back end. Okay, this now the key reason is also its performance. Now, this is the benchmark scheme. So, what is that? The computer language benchmark scheme is a free software project for comparing how a given subset of simple algorithms can be implemented in various popular programming languages. Okay, so the basic idea is you decide over a set of algorithms and you run them in different languages and platforms and see how they perform. Okay, so a set of very simple algorithmic problems, various implementations to above problems in various programming languages, set of unit tests to verify that the submitted implementation solves the problem, and a framework for running the timing. So the main thing is you implement those algorithms in different languages and then you compare the results, which language is popular, which language was faster. So this is a page which gives you the result for this benchmark scheme, hosted by Debian. So again, Debian is a Linux operating system, very popular as a server operating system. Okay, you won't find Node.js over here, but you would find JavaScript. Okay, and inside the JavaScript page you would find the Node.js. So the first comparison is Node.js versus Java. So Java is a compiled language and Node.js, being JavaScript, is not a compiled language, but still they are comparing. Okay, so Node.js here wins in two cases. We won't go into all the tests, what they do, but these are performance tests. So Node.js wins at two areas. Here it's pretty close. Java wins. Again, pretty close. Java wins. Java is winning. Java is winning. But in many cases, they are pretty close. Okay. And here, not that close. Okay. But it's winning kind of in the memory area. It's using less memory. Okay. Let's take PHP. So PHP when compared with Node. So PHP wins in two areas, and then you see Node is winning over here, over here. Okay, and even the difference is a lot in the results. Okay, as you can see, much difference. So here you can clearly see Node.js is much better than PHP if you talk about performance. Let's compare it with Python. Python versus JavaScript. Again, Python wins twice. Node wins here. Node wins here. Again, Node wins. A lot of difference. Node, 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 and the difference is a lot. Okay, so clearly we can say Node.js is. So we compared it with PHP and Python because PHP and Python are also interpreted languages. They are not compiled languages like Java or C or C++. No doubt C, C++, Java would be faster than Node in many cases because they are compiled languages. Compiled code would be faster than any interpreted language. May it be Node like JavaScript, PHP, or Python. Okay, but we looked at the few popular ones. So you get the picture, you get the idea. Okay, another case study by the Linux Foundation. So as you can see, the trend Node.js is growing. I already showed you that. And in this study, as you it talks about GoDaddy. GoDaddy, if you don't know, is one of the largest domain registrars in the world and also a very famous web hosting company. So if you want to create a website, you want a name like linuxfoundation.org or .com, where do you buy the domain? One of the most popular choices is GoDaddy, and you can also buy hosting to host your website, your code, your database. So even GoDaddy uses Node.js, and so we serve billions of requests for our customers' websites every month with Node.js and are using it more and more throughout our business. Joining the Node.js Foundation is another example. So GoDaddy joined the Node.js Foundation. Node.js Foundation was created like a few years after Node was created, looking at its popularity, and many companies who started using Node, they joined the foundation to help the project grow. This is a picture of the Node job trends that they have posted. So you get an idea why to learn Node.js. I think that was enough. So our agenda today is to understand what is Node.js, why was it created, and what sets Node.js apart from the others. So what is Node.js? We talked a lot about who's using it and the performance benchmark, this, that. What is it? So Node.js is an open source, cross-platform JavaScript runtime environment that executes JavaScript code outside a web browser. It's open source. That's one benefit. Cross-platform, another benefit, it can work on any platform, Windows, Mac, or Linux. A JavaScript runtime environment that executes JavaScript code outside a web browser. So before Node.js, if you ask anybody about JavaScript, they would say, oh, it runs in the web browser, Chrome or Firefox or IE, whatever. So, but with Node, what happened is this guy, Ryan Dahl, thanks to him, he got the idea and somehow he took Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine and created Node.js. So we know this guy, Ryan Dahl, is the creator of Node.js, but what is Chrome V8? So let's have a look. This V8. V8 is Google's open source high performance JavaScript and WebAssembly engine written in C++. So to keep it simple, if you go to nodejs.dev, the Node's website, and if you scroll down uh, into this topic, so hold on, think I forgot which page it was. Oh, here it is, the V8 JavaScript engine. So V8 is not the only JavaScript engine. There are other engines as well. So Firefox has SpiderMonkey, Safari has JavaScript Core, Edge has Chakra. Okay, there are many different JavaScript engines, but if you've used a couple of browsers, you would know Chrome, even though it eats a lot of RAM, the performance that Chrome gives, no other browser gives these days. Okay, so V8 is the fastest, and this was pretty evident from the day Chrome came into, like, Chrome was created. uh, Chrome, I think, again came around, I don't know, 2008, 10, I'm not sure. So with Chrome, it changed the game of browsers. It quickly became one of the most popular browsers around the world, and one of the main reasons was the V8 engine that it uses for JavaScript. Around that time, we even had so many applications that were Ajax based, and modern applications like Google Maps, Gmail. Then we had Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. People started playing video, so a lot of things started changing around 2008, 2010. And also we had the Android operating system. Then Chrome was introduced for Android, so a lot of things happened. So V8 was the fastest, and there was no doubt about it. Also, one of the reasons is JavaScript generally is considered as an interpreted language, but modern JavaScript engines, they do some kind of compilation, in the uh, inside them. So JavaScript is internally compiled by V8 with just-in-time compilation to speed up the execution. So no matter what V8 does, but it does the job really well. We know that. Okay. So now we kind of get an idea what Node.js is. It's basically Chrome's JavaScript engine, but running directly on your operating system with, yes, many libraries on top of it to do stuff that Node.js can do. Who uses Node.js? So we get a picture of, now we understand what Node is, it's fast, and why to study it. We also saw example of NASA and GoDaddy, but they are not the only companies using it. There are many more companies using Node.js these days. There's Netflix. Okay, they're one of the most popular ones. No matter where you go in the world, people would know this logo, this N. Okay, and if you look at the official Netflix tech blog, so this is the engineering or technology blog of Netflix, and if you search Node, you would find a lot of articles by the Netflix technology team regarding how they're using Node, making it faster, performance, this, test, a lot of things. Okay, PayPal, the one of the most popular online payment companies, they use Node. LinkedIn uses Node. eBay, Uber, Walmart, Trello. Okay, so a lot of big companies, they use Node.js, and needless to say, there are many small, medium-sized companies that they use Node.js today. Why? Now, no matter what you're learning or studying, you should always ask this question why to yourself, or try to understand Why did Ryan Dahl create Node.js? You know, always ask this question, because when you understand this, you will know its history, what problems they were facing, and then you'll appreciate the technology more, and also you would understand it much, much better. You see three lines of code. It can be any language or any platform, but very simple to understand. The first one is we are running a query, select star from table. Second line, we are reading a file. Okay, if you want, even if you know basic C or Java, you would understand what this code is trying to do. The third line is some network request, so we try to make a request to some page on some site and get data. Now, what's the problem with this? It's perfectly fine example. Well, this is one of the earliest videos of Ryan Dahl, Introduction to Node.js. In fact, if you go to YouTube and if you search Ryan Dahl Intro to Node.js, you go to filters and you sort by upload date, you'll get a lot of videos. Scroll down, so on the top you get the newest video, but if you scroll down to the bottom, you see these videos which are 9 years old and 8 years old. Okay, so this is the original Node presentation, although it says 8 years ago, but it was at the JS conference 2009. JS conference is still very popular JavaScript conference. So anything new, anything that's exciting in the JS world, check out this conference on YouTube. And this is the page of 2009 of Ryan Dahl. So the comment is Node.js might be the most, and this is 2009, okay, November 2009. Node.js might be most exciting single piece of software in current JavaScript universe. Ryan received a standing ovation for his talk, and he really deserved it. So that was excellent talk back then. Okay, and you can also see the comments. People are pretty interested in what this new thing is, because this was this was pretty new back in 2009. People didn't even imagine that we can run JavaScript on the server or directly on the OS. We don't need a browser for that. That was something new. In that, so if you look at those videos, there is this one, Intro to Node.js with Ryan Dahl, and then so basically the ones which are like an hour long. Okay, uh, you can watch these, and so in that video, there's this one instance where he says IO needs to be done differently. That was the main thing. That was the main reason. One of the main reasons behind trying something like Node.js. IO, input output, needs to be done differently. So what's the problem here? So let's say this is some language, okay, not Node, some other language, old language. So we try to run a query. Now, what does a query do? Uh, it can be select, insert, update, delete. It will The SQL command will be run on the database. Database is what? In the end, database is a bunch of files on your system. On the hard drive. It'll either try to read or write something to the hard drive. Same goes for this. Okay, fread file.txt. It will try to read a file, and here it's a network request, although not a direct hard drive operation, but it's a network request which will again take some time. So all these three things will take some time. How much, we don't know. Maybe a few nanoseconds, few milliseconds, maybe more than a second, we don't know. And what does that language, uh, the runtime environment of that language do while these operations are being done? Well, traditionally, in most cases, they just wait. Okay, they just wait. So select star from a table. If it takes 100 milliseconds, the compiler or the runtime environment, they just wait. Okay, and this was eating up a lot of time in the overall execution. So that is why in that old presentation, Ryan Dahl says IO needs to be done differently. This was the main reason. Okay. And yeah, this is the original presentation of 2000, November 2009, the one that I was talking about over here. So yeah, check these out. They are really good presentations. So what did he do? So he created Node.js and changed the way we do that basic stuff of reading a file or running a query or doing a network request. So as you see, we have a second argument where we pass in a function. Okay, so what this system does is, or what this way of writing the code does is, so let's say the node interpreter comes at this line and sees that, okay, we need to read a file. Okay, so as soon as this thing is executed, node continues executing the next lines after that. And this function will be called automatically as soon as the file's data is read and ready. Okay, same over here. The node interpreter comes at this line db.query, select star from table. That command is passed to the database or the underlying APIs, and then node continues executing the next set of lines. And this function will be called when the query operation is done and we have the data ready. Same goes for this network request. So the function will be called as soon as the network request is finished and we have the data from that network request ready. So this is the node way of doing things, and this pretty much changed the game. Okay, so the main thing was IO was taking up a lot of time, so we don't need to wait for the IO to complete or the input output operation to complete. We don't need to wait. We carry on with other tasks, and whenever this task will be finished, reading a file, writing a file, running a query, a network request, you know, the function would be called automatically. So now, putting it all together, Node.js is a JavaScript runtime built on Chrome's V8 JS engine, and Node.js is an event-driven, asynchronous, non-blocking IO model. Now, these three words are the key: non-blocking IO, asynchronous, and event-driven. So let's try and understand. So there are two Node.js websites. Don't get confused. There is nodejs.org. This was the old original website. This is still used for downloads and the older versions. And if you want to check out the documentation and stuff, and so nodejs.dev. This is the new website. Okay. So in Node.js, the old website, there is this article under docs and under guides. If you go to overview of blocking versus non-blocking. So blocking is when the execution of additional JavaScript in the Node.js process must wait until a non-JavaScript operation completes. So what do they mean by non-JavaScript operation? Reading a file, running a query, doing a network request. Okay. There are underlying APIs for that. Remember this, in Node.js, there is no function, or you cannot write a function that directly uh, does something in the hard drive. Directly, I'm saying you can write a function to read a file, but again, that will be calling an underlying API that will do that actual reading or writing or the IO. But Node.js itself does not have a function, or you cannot write a function that directly interacts or directly does the IO. Okay, so that's blocking IO basically, which is there in most of the languages. So now, what is non-blocking IO? We already have an idea. All of the IO methods in Node.js standard library provide asynchronous versions. So whatever methods that we have to do some IO stuff, all of them have the asynchronous version of the code. What does that mean? Look at the code over here. So this is a code that reads a file, okay, and this is not asynchronous. Okay, what does asynchronous mean? This code over here, the node interpreter comes at this line, creates the file system object, comes at this line, fs.read file, it gets the command to read a file, and then it continues executing the next set of lines. That's asynchronous. But here, Node.js also provides synchronous versions of the same methods and functions in many cases, but here it will wait. So this is like mimicking the old traditional way. So if you are using Node.js, you shouldn't be writing code like this. So blocks here until file is read. So it will wait. Okay, this is the old way of doing things. What sets Node.js apart is this, the asynchronous example. Okay, and because JavaScript as a language is asynchronous, that is why this non-blocking IO is possible. Okay. Okay, so JavaScript being asynchronous, thus Node.js is also asynchronous. And because it is asynchronous, the non-blocking IO is possible. A third one, event driven. Okay, Node is event driven. What does that mean? So coming to the nodejs.dev website, you come to learn introduction to Node.js. Here you see an example of Node.js application. The most famous node example that there is out there. Okay, if you expand that, so you see it's a small code, hardly 10, 20, 10 15 lines, creates a server. Okay, so we create a server over here, and what do you see over here? Server dot listen. We have the port name, it could be 8080 3000, any port number, and the host name. So it's a server running on local host, and then we have a function. So this code that you see over here, server.listen, this gives uh, an example of what event driven means. So this function will be executed every time this server.js file or this node server basically gets a request, any incoming request, any incoming HTTP request. Okay, now this is done using events. Okay, so in the Node.js, the old nodejs.org website, in the API section, there is the event section over here. So if you look at that, so much of the Node.js core API is built around idiomatic asynchronous event driven architecture in which certain kinds of objects emit named events that cause. So this is the big definition, but to understand it simply, if you worked on front end, you would know events, you use them mainly for user events like click or any key press event or stuff like that. So this is something similar to that. But imagine not a click, but user coming to your website, opening your website. So that's like a new event that a user arrived on a website, and a function gets called automatically that handles that user event, which is user coming to your website. So server to dawn connection, someone connects. So whenever there's a new connection, this is an example of that. Uh, and we saw the server listen example. which runs the function every time um, a user basically opens your localhost website. So this is one example of how the event-driven architecture is. Node, if you're working on Node, you would see this architecture being put to use a lot. Many APIs are using this event-driven architecture. So now you get the idea. JavaScript, the language itself, is asynchronous. So the Node.js is asynchronous. This is what makes non-blocking I/O and the event-driven architecture possible. So to do a recap, we understood what Node.js is. It's basically Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine uh, directly on your operating system, which can run JavaScript code directly on your OS and not in the browser. Why was it created? One of the main reasons was non-block the I/O, because traditionally old languages, they used to wait whenever there was I/O operation. They used to wait for that to complete. For example, query being run or network requests. So Node brought in the non-blocking I/O. And what sets Node.js apart from the others? Remember the three keywords. It's asynchronous, the event-driven architecture, and non-blocking I/O. And also, you saw its performance. Okay, much faster than PHP or Python or the interpreted languages out there, and at par with languages like Java. So Node.js has increased in popularity in the last since the date actually since the day it was created and brought out to the public. It has grown in popularity and it's still growing. A lot of work being done in the JavaScript domain. So Node.js is here to stay. It's one of the most popular platforms out there today. So I hope you enjoyed this session. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.